Well, my next guest says that sweeping tax reform is needed to help Americans keep more of their own hard-earned money and also to create jobs. Former Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker is honorary chairman of the Institute for Reforming Government, which authored the report. Governor, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to be with you, Charles. Glad to have you filling in.
Hey, thank you. Hey, so President Trump and the administration, they're always thinking, like any administration, how can we goose this economy a little bit? He let it out there, okay, maybe indexing capital gains, maybe payroll tax cuts. Some are seeing it as a flip-flop. I think he just tossed some ideas out there, but they're not bad ideas. And you, in fact, think that states should be the ones that should be looking at lower taxes.
Absolutely. I mean, President Trump, just like President Reagan did. In fact, last week would have been was August 13th, 1981 is when Ronald Reagan signed the first Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981. They did it again in 86, and we saw the economic benefits of that go beyond just his administration into the Bush administration and ultimately continued even in the 90s under Bill Clinton's administration. I think the tax cuts that this president and the Republican Congress passed a few years ago and the president signed continue to be good, but you can do more. In Wisconsin, we cut taxes by more than $8 billion, reducing the burden on the hardworking people of the state and on small business owners and farmers and others. And we saw last year more people working in the state than ever before. It's simple. Put more money into people's hands. They're going to put it back in the economy.
Ideally, this report, what are the features? What are the key tax cuts, rather, that would be good for any state and really achieve these goals that you're talking about?
Well, it's a combination of things. Certainly, first and foremost, you want to make sure not just in the short term, but over the long haul, you put the taxpayers in charge. All too often, sometimes one of the fears people have, even when a tax comes around, is it going to be made permanent? Is this something that sticks around, or is the government going to pull that money back in? And so letting the taxpayers be the ones that not only see the benefits of the tax relief, but putting in place real reforms. For example, we did in Wisconsin, we poured more money in the schools, made historic investments to schools. At the same time, we put tax limits on the levy so that not only schools and local governments benefited from the state's investment, it actually drove down property taxes. 8 years after I took office, property taxes were actually lower than they were before they started. Not just the growth, but the actual amount on the typical home was lower than before we started. That really encourages people to make those investments, not only as consumers, but for a lot of small business owners and family farmers. Right. It encourages them to make investments in their employees and raise wages, which is good for the economy.
Governor, of course, one of the issues, of course, with the federal government and President Trump doing anything more with taxes would be these deficits. We got a report from the CBO yesterday, the mounting federal debt. State governments don't have the leisure of that. So is it really possible for people, skeptics out there, to say, hey, we're going to lower taxes, also lower spending, and also have a positive outcome?
Absolutely. In fact, we just heard that report about the president presenting the special award today. That was given earlier this year to Art Laffer. We all know about the Laffer curve back in the 80s. Today, I call it the Kohl's curve. You go to a department store like Kohl's, you buy something on sale, you had another coupon on top of that. In the end, you pull out some Kohl's cash, and it sometimes feels like they're actually paying you to buy the merchandise. They're not, but why do they do that? Because they make money off of value and not off of higher prices. Governments that charge high rates and have high tax brackets typically see less economic opportunity. Those that drop them, as it happened during the president's term when Ronald Reagan was in office, and as we're seeing under the Trump tax cuts as well. Right. You lower the tax rates, you reduce make it more simple in terms of the tax code itself, and those dollars go right back into the economy. In Wisconsin, we actually saw $8 billion worth of tax relief. At the same time, we saw our revenues continue to go up. Why? Because the economy was growing, wages were up, more people invested, and that helped put that money right back into the economy again.
It's really remarkable, and I would even argue the income inequality issue is worse in these high tax states than they are in low tax states. But I do like to switch gears with you, and while I have you, I want to ask you your take on President Trump's feud with the Congresswomen Tlaib and Omar.
Well, it's outrageous to me that the two of them. I just was with Kevin McCarthy a couple of days ago. He and a bunch of Democrats and Republicans were just in Israel not long ago. They could have gone on that trip. They didn't want this. They knew all along they were going to be prohibited from going in there. Why? Because Israel's had a law in the books for the last few years that says if you're out to take on Israel, if you're for the boycott, the BDS movement that's trying to boycott Israel and its companies and its employers, they don't want you there. They knew this was going to happen. This was just a cheap political stunt to draw attention away from just how extreme their positions are, not only when it comes to Israel, but my goodness, you've got one of the two who said earlier this year that some people did something in regards to the terrorists that attacked America on 9/11. These are extreme positions, and unfortunately, they're becoming more and more mainstream in the Socialist Democrat Party we see in America today.
There was also a hint or a suggestion, perhaps, that aid be cut off from Israel. Ironically, aid that was authored under the Obama administration.
Well, and not only that, but this is, by any measure, and you look at all the indexes out there, Israel is the only democracy in all the Middle East. This is not only our ally, this is a country where religious freedoms, I was just there in June, I was looking out over the old city, the holy city, and you see not only the Jewish, the Western Wall, you not only see the Christian sites that matter obviously very much to people like myself and other Christians, but you can see the third most holiest Islamic site in the world is right there. All of those are open to the public, no matter what faith you might have. They're just completely backwards, but this is what's happening to the Socialist Democrat Party in America. They're becoming more and more and more extreme, and I hope the voters will see that when they go to vote in November of next year.
Governor, speaking of voters, President Trump, the campaign now saying they're eyeing the Midwest and these Rust Belt states for 2020. Do you think that's a good strategy?
Oh, absolutely. You look at Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, even Minnesota, Iowa, for sure. These are all states that have fared well over the last few years. And not only are unemployment rates at either record or near record lows, you see it across the board, not only statewide, but as you see nationally, African American, Latino, unemployment rates for people with disabilities, unemployment rates for veterans, all of those are at the lowest they've ever been recorded. It's particularly a benefit in agriculture and manufacturing states. And this president's standing up for those workers and standing up for our farmers. And he needs to get that message out if he's going to win next November. It's going to be tough, but he can do it.
Governor Walker, you know about tough elections. You survived a lot of them. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you evangelizing.
Thank you, Charles.
Low taxes and we keep more money. Who could argue with that?